possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
2, 1, 0, 0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery, roger, go for deploy.
Space Tune and to everybody in the shuttle program, the crew is go for launch.
Roger, nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Good afternoon and welcome back to NASA's Johnson Space Center for our third and final news conference today with NASA's Boeing crew flight test crew, Commander Butch Wilmore and pilot Suni Williams. We'll be taking some questions today from here in the room through our phone bridge and through social media using the hashtag AskNASA. But before we get started, we will kick it off with some opening remarks from our crew. Butch, take it away.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you so much. I tell you what, that was a pretty cool video starting out there, wasn't it? We want to watch that. Might want to watch that again. Yeah, we are thrilled. I tell you what, there are hundreds of wonderful, great, passionate Americans, passionate about human spaceflight at NASA, at Boeing, and at United Launch Alliance that are thrilled and excited that we are to the point of actually doing press conferences now. Launching sometime in early May, hopefully the 1st of May, and that's our date. And we, like I said, we also are a part of those Americans that are thrilled to be at this point and excited to hear and share some thoughts, our thoughts with you today, and interested in and expecting some good questions from the audience today.
Yeah, I fully agree, Butch. It's really exciting to finally get here to this day, to see some familiar faces in the audience. And like I said, like Butch said, represent so many people who have worked for years to get this Boeing Starliner ready to go. So we're just happy to be the tip of the sphere, the face of it, and take it to space and take it to the International Space Station.
You're here.
All right, thank you both. So we will take our first question from the phone bridge, and then we'll go ahead and start taking questions from here in the room. So if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand, and we'll bring the mic over to you. On our phone bridge, we have Marcia Dunn. Go ahead. Okay, we will come back to you, Marcia. We are not able to hear you at the moment. We will go ahead and head over to social media. Tom on Instagram asks, how do these suits compare to an older version of a spacesuit?
Suni?
I really like these suits. I think you saw a picture of it in the beginning when in the advertisement, or the beginning part when you saw us both there. They're really nice, slick, comfortable suits, easy to get in and easy to get out of, allow a lot of mobility. We worked with the company David Clark through Boeing to get the suits squared away for us, and we really like them. I think they're really nice. They're a little bit new and interesting insofar as the helmet, which you probably saw or maybe didn't see because it was laying behind us. We actually flip it over our head, and then there's a zipper to close it. But that's not totally uncommon. We have a pressure zipper on our ACES suits from Shuttle, and this is something that we also have to close up the suit. So it's not too out of the ordinary. It's just a little bit different from what folks have seen. It's not a second or a separate part that you connect onto the suits, but yeah, super comfortable.
Yeah, I think they probably put that helmet the way they did because I keep having this reoccurring dream that it's launch time and I can't find my helmet. So the helmet attached, it just, as you said, zips up and it's all ready and good to go. Great suit.
Okay, we'll go ahead here in the room.
Irene Klautz with Aviation Week. For both of you, beyond the suits, can you talk a little bit about your past experiences flying shuttle, Soyuz, and what you're prepared for Starliner, what you think is going to be different, and just kind of what you're expecting as you give this vehicle a shakeout?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can tell you, just to start out, what's going to be different. I'll touch on that. So the shuttle training program path to launch, the Soyuz training path to launch were very defined, very integrated, very straightforward. All the boxes were there, checking the boxes as you go through, preparing yourself step by step to get ready for those launch days, and also for the task on the International Space Station. This is completely different. This is development preparation for the first crewed flight of this spacecraft, and there is no training program. We are making the training program. We're in the process of doing that, preparing future crews to go through the process to get prepared, and this has been development, both experimental and developmental test, because this is a test mission. That's why it says on the patch, crew flight test. And the focus is the mission, the test, and the things we're doing to certify and validate the capabilities of the spacecraft. And so this is completely different as far as the preparation goes for those other missions, in that it is new. And we are sort of the trailblazers, if you will, in getting those training processes in place and developing them.
Yeah, and I'll just add that the spacecraft's pretty unique. It is a great amount of automation, and that's the goal that we want spacecraft to be in our future, to just make sure that they're all automated. But the crew is sort of the last line of defense, and we have the ability to get in there and fly manually if we need to, or just back up the systems manually to make sure everything is working correctly. And that seems very appropriate for the first flight of this spacecraft, to make sure that everything will work correctly. So, you know, when you think about shuttle, there was a lot of manual interaction with it. There's less in this one. When you think about Soyuz, that also had manual interaction as well as some automation, but this one is a really nice combination and leans toward the automation, but particularly in this test flight allows us to shake out all of that manual flying, just to make sure that if anything ever goes wrong, not only in this flight but on later flights, we'll have that reassurance of the crew being the backup. So it's a really slick spacecraft in that regard.
Yeah, very, very capable.
CBS News. And just to follow up on that, you know, some of us were talking yesterday after getting in the simulator and looking around. The Starliner looks more like a traditional spacecraft compared to the Dragon, for example. Mm-hmm. As test pilots, I mean, all the manual capability you were just talking about, Suni, is that something that appeals to you in this case? I mean, I'm looking for some general impressions of the spacecraft, its flight safety, what you're able to do in it. I mean,
yeah, I think as we go deeper and deeper into space, you get further and further away from Earth, and you're more and more autonomous, right? And I think in those modes, we are, it is human spaceflight, and we want to make sure that our systems are robust in their automation, but we also want to make sure that our backup systems are equally as robust for when those possibilities where automation could fail. And when you're at the moon or beyond, and you have a very important task that you're taking care of, whatever it may be, rendezvous, docking, landing, whatever it is, and there certain failure modes can happen. You want to be able to continue that, because the mission, you've gone through so much to get to wherever you're going. You want to be able to finish the task, and those manual capabilities give you that ability. So we have trained extensively, because like you said, it does have controls, the spacecraft does, and we don't expect any failure modes. Any failures, significant failures, but if something were to occur, because we're all humans, we can't build things perfectly. If something were to occur, we have several downgrade modes, one of which is manual. Another one is a backup mode, which is more direct from the one specific computer directly to the jets, if you will, to maneuver, that we can control this in any type of failure mode. Even if we had already done our deorbit burn, if you know much about orbital mechanics, if you do your deorbit burn, you are going to a point within a certain error analysis of where that point is going to be. You can't change and go somewhere else. So if we had a significant failure, even after our deorbit burn, we can go to this backup mode and fly it manually and still hit the bullseye, which is a huge, huge capability that other spacecraft simply don't have. For instance, we lose all our computers, we can still hit the bullseye in this backup mode, which makes this in any number of failure modes that could happen, makes it very, very capable and safe, if you will, for the humans that are on board.
Wall Street Journal. Thanks for doing this. Have any of the challenges, going back to OFT-1, that Boeing and NASA have been kind of working through, giving you pause about the vehicle, about the program, and what was your role in any, if anything, in helping to analyze and sort of work through some of those challenges and issues? Thanks.
I'll give the short answer and let Suni give some of the details. We were involved in all of it. I mean, we were a part of the process. If you think about it, and the reason is, you've got all these different entities working towards the common goal, right? And all the integration of the launch, the rocket, the spacecraft itself, all comes together, and we are the ones that see all of the integration. So we've been intricately involved in all of the processes and the testing and the development to make sure that this mission and future missions go as planned. So,
yeah, I mean, that's why we're here today, right? So we've been, like Butch said, we've been involved from the very beginning, from before OFT, right? And saw OFT happen and understood that there's some fixes that need to happen. And we have worked with both our NASA counterparts and our NASA folks and our Boeing counterparts to make sure all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and that's why we're here today. So just the capability Butch was talking about, the backup capability, for example, that's one of the things that, you know, we worked in very integrated with the Boeing team to make sure we have that, to make sure that we feel very confident and ready to go. So, I mean, to summarize the answer, I feel like we've invested the time. It's been a couple years since OFT, and we've checked all those boxes, crossed the T's, dot the I's, where we feel both ready and comfortable to go, and the spacecraft is ready to go as well.
Okay, we're going to head back to the phone bridge. Marcia Dunn, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me this time? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Marcia.
Oh, great, thank you. For both of you, I have a question, if you could each answer. You were assigned to this flight 2 years ago and were involved with it much longer. How have you managed over all this time to stay sharp, stay focused as the finish line keeps moving to the right? How have you stayed at your peak through all this, and how hard has that been? Thanks.
Okay, sure. Yeah, Marcia. I don't look at the finish line. The finish line is well beyond landing. There's so much analysis of what we did, so I don't focus on that. I focus on what's taking place at that moment. Obviously, the finish line is part of that, but we want to make sure before we get to the launch, which is not the finish line, that the spacecraft is ready, and that's what really our task is. You know, for the sake of a better term, we are trained in flight test.
Yep.
And by the good Lord's allowing, we are now in a position for space flight test, which not a lot of people have had the opportunity to do. And we take that very seriously. So we look at the task at hand, the ones that are close, that we're dealing with at the time, also always looking at the long-term mission. So the finish line is not something that I focus on. It's what we have to do to get there. So.
Yeah, I would entirely agree. I mean, after OFT, I think we saw that there needed to be some work, right? So it was day to day, like what's the next thing that we have to ask a question about, that we have to look at, that we have to investigate, that we could give some recommendations to, that we can work together to find a solution. So it's just been like a day-to-day process. And I think we are pretty sharp, not just us, but our whole control team, because we've gone through this process together. And so we really looked into the spacecraft and delved into everything that we could know about it, and effected some change on things where we thought there needed to be change. And that's why I think we're ready to go, because we have been part of the process that Butch was talking about earlier, that developmental process. So it wasn't quite done at OFT, and we noticed that, and we've worked to make sure now it's done, it's ready.
Yeah, we've got some just amazing individuals, guys like Ryan Kirker and Tony Sakachi at Boeing, and guys like Gary Wentz at ULA, and others, any number of people. I'm not even going to start naming the people at NASA that we work with day in and day out that are passionate, like I said earlier, about what we do, and passionate about getting us to the place where we need to be to fly this mission and fly it safely. And sure, we'll do that. Of course, the commercial crew program and all those folks as well. So it's a one big team working towards the common goal.
Okay, we'll take our next question here in the room. Go ahead.
Hi, Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now. Thanks to both of you for taking the time. Suni, you mentioned having the opportunity to shake out some things during flight. I wonder, for both of you, what's the part of the mission that you're looking most forward to as far as manual control, or some of the things you'll be able to run through its paces as you're either in flight or once you're docked to station? Thanks.
Oh, yeah, real quick. I'll make it quick. That's easy. I'm looking forward to walking to the pad and the launch and the test that we're doing going up towards station, docking with station. I mean, the whole thing. You can't pick one.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I mean by that. It's full of it's a test pilot's dream, if you will. Everything that we're doing from start to finish and have been involved with, and it's a great seat to be in.
So, I feel like you always pinch yourself. It feels like the first flight. When I flew shuttle, we went through all of this paces too, and even getting into quarantine, and it never felt real. I think it comes back alive every single time there's a possible launch out there. Is it really going to happen? Is it really going to happen? So I think getting into quarantine is going to be like, whoa, we've got that far. I mean, this is the first time we've had a press conference, so it's really exciting. But when we get into quarantine, that's sort of getting to be it. And so then it's all icing on the cake. By that time, pretty much everything's done, and like Butch said, it's going to be super exciting. I really cannot wait till we see Space Station through the window. That would be super cool.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, we'll take another question here in the room. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Elizabeth Howell from space.com. Thanks for your time. Right over here. Can you speak a little bit about the handover in training information from yourself to the first operational crew, Starliner 1? Is it something that you're starting to work on already, or are you going to be working on that more as the mission is concluding? Thank you.
We have the luxury of having the person that's actually worked from the astronaut corps with the commercial crew program and this endeavor longer than anyone, and that's Mike Fink. Mike Fink we had a little flight test team, if you will, that was looking at all the tests and test objectives, not just in space, but also in the simulators, and he headed that for us. And we have the luxury of having him on the second mission. So the second mission it's not the test is done. It's really kind of a test mission as well. It won't be called a flight test, but we can't do everything that needs to be done on this one. They will continue that helm as well as Scott Tingle is the commander, Mike is the PLT, and like I said, we have that luxury, and the teams also involved with this endeavor for SCFT is also a big part of that one. So yeah, has the handover started? Years ago? Yeah, it certainly has. Good question.
Yeah, and he's been actually training with us as well. He's our backup, so if something happens to one of us, we'll have Mike step in. So both of us have had the opportunity to work with Mike in the cockpit, and it's been a real luxury because we're sharing ideas the whole time, and he's taking notes and making changes and getting ready for the next flight as well.
Yeah, he brings so much. I mean, we've learned a lot from Mike as well, so he's very knowledgeable.
Okay, we'll take our next question from here in the room again.
Hi, Robert Perlman with Collect Space. You spoke about digging into the details and making sure that the systems work, but is on a lighter side, since you are the first crew to fly this spacecraft, is there anything from a crew preference side of that you can point to that that's Butch's Velcro or Suni's cue card? And on the related note, we've seen that you've worked with tablets, but how much of the flight data file is now tablet-based and how much is paper-based aboard the spacecraft?
Yeah, we have like the cereal box line between us. Don't touch my Velcro. He won't. No, I'm joking. But no, like we do have different sides of the cockpit, of course. That's our assigned seats. We will flip around a little bit and switch seats for a couple tasks and stuff like that. But it's all the same. We have an ascent entry checklist, sort of similar to the shuttle time frame, so that when we're in the dynamic modes, we have a checklist in case we have any malfunction. So it has all the malfunctions in there. We actually have some cue cards just to guide us uphill. Once we get to orbit, right after LVSEP, we'll be getting out our tablets, and everything from there is on the tablets. We have backup paper just in case. You want to make sure that this computers work in space okay, the batteries don't have any problems and things like that. So we have a couple extra tablets, but we have a couple procedures just in case we have any issues with the tablets as well, paper procedures, but primarily ascent entry for the checklist.
She used a term, LVSEP, launch vehicle. We don't call it that. We call it the rocket because it sounds a lot cooler.
Rocket's cool.
Rocket.
Okay, we're going to hop over to our phone bridge, and then we will come back here in the room. David Curley, go ahead.
Thanks very much. This is the third question kind of in this area, and I apologize, but I'd like to go a little broader. Suni, I think it's almost 9 years you were assigned to commercial crew, ups and downs, roller coaster. Can you just kind of describe to us what it's been like mentally to extend the timeline and finally get to this spot?
It's great to get to the spot. I'll just say that. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a timeline, but you know, I feel very lucky, as well as I know Butch does too. Both of us have flown in space before, so it's not the first time going to space. So it's nice to be able to use the expertise that we had in both the Soyuz and the shuttle to work on a developmental program. I mean, we've both called it before a test pilot's dream, because it's really all the work that goes in before you actually get to do the thing, because you have already studied and know with the engineers what could not happen, fix whatever needs to be fixed. All that work, all that preparation has actually been really rewarding to see it come together. I'm not going to say it's been easy, right? Like you said, it's a little bit of a emotional roller coaster as things are getting fixed, or you see a couple steps back, but then you see a couple steps forward. And we're at that point now. We knew we would get here eventually. It's a solid spacecraft. We have such good people that we're working with, you know, all across the board. We knew we would eventually get there, and, you know, bringing that team along with us for this launch is just super rewarding. I don't think I would really want to be in any other place right now.
Okay, we'll take another question from here in the room.
Hi, Sunny and Butch. My name is Natalie Quintero, and I'm with Stanford Aerospace. And my question to you, on a more personal note, are there any personal items that you're bringing on board the Starliner's crew flight test mission, and maybe the story of the why you chose those items specifically that you can share with us?
Yes. Yeah, you go first.
Yeah, of course there's a couple things. We always bring a thing. I think most people always bring things that sort of represent, you know, where we came from and how we got here. You know, I wouldn't be in this position if I wasn't in the Navy, in the military. So I have a couple Navy military things. Just on a personal note, I also have a near and dear to my heart an elementary school in Massachusetts, so we'll be bringing a couple things from there, and you'll see when we open up the packages. Maybe we'll show you what the gravity indicator is later on.
You mentioned earlier, and Sunny alluded to it as well, the roller coaster. You know, it hasn't been really a roller coaster, and it has been some changes and here and there, but I can tell you who it has been a roller coaster for. It's Michelle Beaujolais, and she is our scheduler, because events change. This test we're going to do now that wasn't on the schedule, and oh, by the way, we don't want to do it in 3 weeks. We want to do it tomorrow, and Michelle has to juggle all of that. So one of the things I'm flying is that Sunny and I got her, you know, our Navy wings. We're pretty proud of our Navy wings. There's a heritage that goes into the wings of gold for a naval aviator. And to have the Navy wings of gold that we both have put a lot of effort, our families have as well, and with the astronaut symbol in the center, so it makes it Navy pilot astronaut wings, which is unique within itself. We had a ring made out of gold in the wings in shape of a ring, and we gave them to Michelle. Because she's the one that's enduring all of this stuff and all, you know, back and forth and changing things. Well, we just go with the flow, and I'm gonna fly those for her. So that's one example of flying something for someone. You know, I'm doing the same for my brother. My brother's got huge fingers, so Jack. So it's a really big wing ring. Cost a whole lot of money too, Jack. Anyway, so that type of thing for them. Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Okay, we'll take another question right here in the room.
Thank you, Mark Carreau, for Aviation Week in Space Technology. I know one of you is designated commander and the other pilot, but listening to you and knowing something about your backgrounds, you both sound like commanders. I wonder how you guys see it.
I am so glad you asked that question. That is a great question. Not the others weren't. That's a great question, because that's one thing that yeah, okay, I'm the commander. I'm the one that's got the title CDR. The first conversation we had after the assignments were made, we sat down and I said, Sonny, I'm going to have the title, but we're going to do this together. And well, for several reasons, because I need her and her expertise and what she brings to the table. I know her past, I know her background. We go all the way back to the test pilot school days. I won't tell you how many decades ago that was. But we've known each other a long time, and I respect her ability, capability, insight, all of that. And so, yeah, I have the title, but we make decisions together. Something happens in the cockpit, we are together, and she would say this as well. It's almost like we're reading each other's minds by this point. Yeah. So I appreciate that question. Yes, there's a designation, a delineation of roles and responsibilities, but as far as who's in charge, we're both doing that.
Okay, we'll head back over to the phone bridge from Sophie Sanchez.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Is there any new Boeing tech that you guys can share with us on Starliner that you've trained on that you see the most value in for future spaceflight? And then just on a lighter side, is there any additional non-NASA training or prep either of you is taking on before your flight? Thank you.
If you understood
Can
the
you
question.
clarify the question a little bit?
Can you repeat the first part of your question, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was asking if there's any new Boeing technology that you guys have trained on that you see the most value in for future spaceflight.
There's one thing that comes to mind right now is they have a virtual reality capability where you can actually put the goggles on, the headset, and you can fly around inside the spacecraft, and some of the things that are underneath the floor that are important, very important things that we might have to do maintenance on in certain specific scenarios. It's good. We're going to do this right before we fly. We're going to go into the VR lab, and we're going to go and we're going to fly around, look, refresh our memory on some of those items, some of the things, the desiccant and the items that scrub the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, down underneath those seats, our seats as well on the floor, and look at those and refresh our memory on all of that. So that's a technology that hasn't existed in the past, a virtual reality of the cockpit itself inside, and we can do that. Actually, we could probably even put it on our tablets that we mentioned earlier and fly around as well on that. So that's one. But there's the simulators themselves are amazing, and the test facility where we do a lot of our tests is coming along and being built up to be an amazing Iron Bird, hopefully eventually as well. So you think?
Yeah, I would just say something about the training. You know, we have partial trainers that are glass cockpit essentially. Our cockpit is not, but you can emulate the cockpit with our little glass cockpits there as trainers, and you can have a couple different strings of simulations going on at the same time, and so that's been really nice. We could be in our everyone saw yesterday, the VMS, and then at the same time people can be in the CPTT, and then working on different techniques and things like that. So I think
part task trainer,
sorry. But I think that's pretty unique and nice and configurable, and allows us to start the simulations at certain points in the profile that would be interested to folks to train on. So I think that capability was really nice.
Okay, we'll take another question here in the room. Go ahead.
Hi, Stephen Clark from Ars Technica. Butch and Suni, probably if both of you could give an answer to this. Starliner seems to be more pilot interactive than Crew Dragon, for example. Curious, you two, and also I know you aren't the only ones. We had Chris Ferguson, part of the design process. But as test pilots and astronauts, what kind of input or suggestions did you and your colleagues offer Boeing in the design of the layout of the displays or the hand controllers or the seats, for example? How tied was the astronaut office to Boeing engineers during that process?
Well, early on, we had Suni was part of the cadre that was dealing not with necessarily the design of the cockpit. That was done very early, as far as where the displays physically are, how you interact with the displays, those type of things. Those were pretty much set years and years, over a decade ago. But everything else we have been well involved with. As far as the display, some of the display development, we have new displays that we didn't have a year and a half ago that are hugely beneficial to the operation of this spacecraft in all its various modes. We have tweaked most every display there is, including we have tweaked every single procedure there is. We have new procedures that we didn't have at one point based on our testing and the improved capabilities of this spacecraft, which are, like I said earlier, in any mode that we may find ourselves in, we have survivable modes. We had black zone modes, we would call it, on entry, because we land on land. And we had some modes where if something were to happen in a certain phase of the entry, that we weren't guaranteed that we could hit that bullseye. And around our bullseyes, there in the desert, the flat areas, there are mountains. And there's a high chance if you go in the mountains that you're not surviving that. And so now we don't have that concern. We don't have those zones. They don't exist anymore because of the improved capability of this spacecraft.
Yeah, we We had the testing, the standard testing in their avionics software integration lab, and we went in there and asked a couple questions along with our counterparts, our Boeing MO folks, for example, that you probably talked about earlier, and Boeing folks who are there who are running the ASIL. Asked a couple questions, got a couple answers maybe we didn't like, and so we made a more extensive test plan, worked with them to do that, and we found some of these areas where we made some improvements. So yeah, I think our input as testers, along with the engineers who are working on these projects already, we're able to influence some of the design to get us the full capability that we wanted. And it goes back, like Butch said, in the very beginning, of course, the layout, the cockpit, and all that kind of stuff was sort of in the design space from the very beginning. We potentially didn't have a lot of influence way back in that part, but we had a test where we got in the suits in the spacecraft a while ago, and we had some discrepancies that we wanted to get fixed. We did it again as a Butch, myself, and Spanky in the cockpit again, and we improved some of the capabilities there, and we're able to show that off. So we had, whenever we get in to do a test, there's always like, hey, what about this, what about that? Some things, we'll accept, and some things that we've asked for some improvements, and some things we've met halfway along the way and improved the spacecraft. So yeah, we have affected quite a bit, I would say, in the last 5 years.
Yeah, something as basic, I'm sorry, as the crew suit seat integration. You've actually got to get in the suit and get in the seat and make sure those things are correct. And we did that early on, several years ago. Like Suni said, we found some things that needed to be rectified. And that's just part of the process. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the exciting things about being in the role that we're in. Yeah. You test even those kind of issues, not just all of the flying, but also just the basics living and habitating within the capsule is very important. So.
I can remember maybe one Atlas V that the RD-180 underperformed by maybe 5 seconds or something like that. But it makes you think about aborts. So could you talk to us a little bit about abort scenarios with the Starliner, how confident you are they would work, how long you could end up being in the water, what the requirement is for people to come find you and get you, and just tell us a little bit about how those things work. Thanks.
Yeah. So that's it's a different software. It's an AAS software. And when an abort occurs, that software takes over, and it has what we call indexes from the pad, so index 1, all the way up through actual rendezvous, or the ATO, abort to orbit, that phase. And I think the indexes go up to 60 something, I forget exactly, yeah. 63 or something like that. So every phase within this AAS software affects whatever phase of flight you're in as far as how the abort is performed. And also we got training on that, and we had some questions, and we made some changes to our procedures to make sure that even though most of that is observing, basically, there's not a lot of action, but if we had to take action and to make sure that the parachutes came out, as an example, very important thing to get your parachutes out. So if we had to take action, we had ample time to do that. So we made some inputs there.
Yeah, we made some suggestions for the software in the future. Not to change AAS, but maybe just to give the crew a little bit more knowledge of what's going on for, Butch and I have been training on this spacecraft for quite some time, so we sort of know already, we memorized a lot of it already, but maybe for future crews, so we don't have to have that extensive training, a couple improvements for situational awareness on the display, so understand exactly where the abort is and what they should be expecting. We have a general idea of it with some verbiage, but having those indexes on board really cues off some key things to think about during the abort. So we tested them and looked at them extensively and talked to the experts who designed them over at the ASIL and really have a really good feel about how the aborts are going to be affected if by chance we get into that scenario.
Yeah, it's a very robust set of software packages, if you will, those indices that Jim Harder and his folks at Boeing put a lot of effort into, and it's very capable and very trustworthy, and we've seen that multiple times in the sim, not only in the simulator. Basically, you've got several types of sims, right? You've got a simulator, you tell it what to do, and it does what you tell it, right? And then you've got another simulator that Suni alluded to, ASIL, Avionics Software Integration Lab, which is the real hardware, the real boxes, the real lines that we do a lot of our tests. We also do tests in the other simulator where because it's got running flight software, actual flight software. So again, like we said, it's been a great run through all of this in preparation for eventually, hopefully May 1st, we're laying our backs in Starliner getting ready to go.
I'll just tell you also about Atlas V. I went and I've seen a couple launches, Atlas V launches, and one of them happened to be a payload which was pretty expensive. And I was talking to the head of that payload, and I was like, okay, I feel pretty good about getting on this Atlas V and this RD-180. If they're going to invest a lot of money and put that thing up in space, I'm okay. I think ULA has launched something to every planet in the solar system. So it's a pretty awesome rocket. It's going to be pretty great to be sitting on top of that thing.
Yeah, ULA, this will be the 100th launch of the Atlas, we're told. And we are excited to be ULA's first self-loading payload.
Okay, we'll head over to social media. Gary on X would like to ask Suni if you will have any time to do marathons on the space station this time.
Thank God, no. Actually, our mission, could be variable, maybe 8 days, maybe a little bit longer than that. We'll see how long we're up there for. But yeah, I love running, of course. I love doing athletic stuff. I love to, show people that is, a natural part of life, and it's good for all of us. But I think this time we might have a little too little time to be able to do a marathon. But I will for sure get on there. I was just talking to our trainers this morning, and I want to go for a run morning of launch, whenever that morning is. And as soon as we rendezvous, which will be about like 25 hours later, as soon as we get into the International Space Station, I want to put the harness on and get on the treadmill. I don't want to lose a day, because I think it's really important to make sure we keep exercising.
Okay, we'll take our next question from here in the room. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Jackie Goddard for the Times of London newspaper. So while you two are up there working hard and going through all the tasks that you have to do and keeping busy, there are folks left behind who might be worrying about you, and I wonder how you prepare your families for what you're going off to do, and especially through that roller coaster that you've had in terms of safety and the flight tests and the getting everything battened down tight safety-wise. Can you talk us through a little bit about what it's been like for your families and how you've prepared them? Thank you.
Yeah, I speak for my family quickly. Sonny's probably in the same position. Our families have been a part of this from the beginning. Yep. My wife and I met when I was already in the Navy deploying on aircraft carriers. My daughters were born after we got here. This is all they know. So this is life. This is not something yet. Daddy's going to space again. Well, actually, it is kind of like that. Yeah, he's going to go. He's going to. That's just what they know. So as far as preparing them, they're prepared. We trust in a sovereign God that's going to, whatever the plan is, we're ready for it, whatever that might be. And so, yeah, they're excited as we are and ready to go as well.
Yeah, my husband has also been part of this for quite some time. He was also in the Navy, and we both deployed. So I think he's used to having one of us go at some point in time and the other one stay home and take care of the yard and the bills and things like that. I'm sorry to do that to you, Mike, but it's going to be what it's going to be, and he knows it, and it's okay. He's been, seen both, in my time frame since 2015, working with both SpaceX and Boeing company. He's heard, because I go home and you talk about, hey, this is going on there, this is going on there. He's heard that this is developmental, and he knows that. He knew it when I was a test pilot. Also, I actually tested the helicopter that both of us flew. So he knew the ins and outs of the problems that could go on with an aircraft test. So he knows the ins and outs of problems that could happen with spacecraft test. But we wouldn't be sitting here if we didn't feel and tell our families that we feel confident in this spacecraft and our capabilities to control it and to be on it. So I think they're along for the ride, and they, at least in my family, they're excited. They haven't been to KSC for quite some time since shuttle flights a little while ago. So everybody's pumped up, and I'm telling everyone, get in your camper, come on down. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a party.
Okay, we'll take another question from here in the room. Go ahead.
Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. If your flight plan unfolds as expected, could you take us through when you're going to be doing manual flying and who's going to be doing it? And also if you do plan to test this backup mode that you were describing?
Yes, Thanks. Good question. So we'll launch, we'll get launch vehicle, the rocket separation, and then we will circularize our orbit. We will have another burn that will get us in a position to rendezvous with space station, and after that second burn, that NC burn, we will do some of the manual tasks that we have on the plan. Operational crew capabilities is what we call them, OCCs, and in that is a fair amount of manual control, manual flying, manual checkout. For instance, let's say that you lose your computer. Your computer has the knowledge of where the sun is, where the stars are, where the satellites are, the tracking satellites that allow us to bounce our communication. So if you lose your computer, how do you point your antenna at the satellite? We're going to test it in this backup kind of mode. We're not going to go into backup mode, but we're going to test that capability. How do you point? Our solar array is basically on the back of the spacecraft. How do you point? We call it tail sun. How do you point your tail at the sun if you don't have a computer? Well, we're going to go through and we're going to test that. You have to do it manually. I'm going to do a lot of that. We've got 2 test pilots on board, so at some point, as we're going uphill, I'm going to get out of the left seat, Sunny's going to jump in the left seat, and she's going to do some of the manual tasks that we have in the plan. Once we dock or get on the docking axis at space station, there'll be some manual control with a target, which will be the space station, and we'll use the target of the space station to do some manual maneuvering, basically checking out the spacecraft to make sure that it flies as it is intended to fly, that the inputs and the response you get is as expected. Hopefully it matches up exactly with the simulator, and if it doesn't, all that data is going to be downlinked, our knowledge will be shared, and they'll tweak the little systems they need to make the simulator operate like the spacecraft. So that's going uphill. Coming downhill is when we actually go into the backup mode, so the backup mode, just very briefly, I put a control into the computer, into the right-hand controller. It sends a signal to the computer. The computer goes, okay, they want to do this. Send some a pulse, have that jet pulse, that jet pulse, that jet pulse, that jet pulse, but based on basically an algorithm. In backup mode, we don't have a computer. We have an integrated propulsion controller, which is a computer within itself that deals with all of our ordnance event, our parachutes coming out, and all of the jet firings. And in those IPCs, in integrated propulsion controllers, is a lookup table. So I put a control input into the RHC, the right-hand controller, and it goes to the lookup table and just basically says, fire those 2 jets. And it does that. So it's almost direct control to the jet through this IPC. And we are going to test all of that, to include firing the OMAX, which are the bigger jets we have to do our deorbit burn, our circularization burn, and all of that. So that's all flowed into the process and the plan throughout all aspects of the flight. I think I covered it all.
Yeah, you covered it all.
Yeah, got it all. It's pretty much in a nutshell without going into the nitty-gritty details.
Okay, we're going to head over to social media on Instagram. Sahar asks, what kind of experience should I try to gain before applying to be an astronaut?
Oh, wow. We have people from all different fields in the astronaut office. We happen to be test pilots, but not everybody in the office is a test pilot. We have scientists, we have engineers, we have mathematicians, we have teachers in the office as well. I think everybody, though, has a STEM background. So if you are interested in STEM, interested in exploring, interested in being a team member, that's sort of the job description. And we actually have an astronaut application process going on right now and open, if you want to be an astronaut, until April 2nd. So we would love to have more and more people come and apply, because we have a lot of exciting things going on. This is just the first flight of the Starliner, but we also have the Artemis program, heading us back to the moon and beyond. So we have a lot of stuff happening. So apply, and we'd love to have more future astronauts.
Okay, we'll take another question from here in the room. Go ahead.
Hello, Elizabeth Howell from space.com. Can you talk about the videos and photos you're going to be grabbing for public outreach? Thank you.
So while we're up in space is what I think what you're talking about, right? So on board we have a system, a camera system that will take some video of what we're doing inside the cockpit. So you should be able to see us before launch, getting in and seeing us doing all that process, because this was the first time we're self-loading ourselves, right? So all that's going to be pretty interesting and stuff. And we also have that system will also be recording some outreach videos once we get to space, and then once we wake up the second morning as we're getting ready for the rendezvous, we'll be sending those down to everybody once we get to the space station. So just letting everybody see what's going on. And then for public outreach, when we get on the International Space Station, if we have have time because we've got a lot of stuff going on. We have some connections to family and friends and things back at home. I quickly mentioned this elementary school in Massachusetts, which I think I'm going to connect with and talk to them. I went over there and gave a quick brief to all the little kids about what's going to happen, what the rocket launch is all about, and so it'll be fun to show them what it's like to actually live and be in space. So that's on my docket. That's a high priority. And then, of course, I have a couple other friends and family that I want to get to talk to, and share some of that stuff with folks back at home.
Can I go back to the previous question real quick? Just to add a little bit on to the previous question. When I first got here to NASA, one of the earliest briefs I got from another astronaut who was briefing our entire class, he basically said, in a nutshell, he said, know everything and perform it well. That's what your tasking is. Well, I can tell you over this time since then, I'm not able to do that. But I do know some individuals who are. Let me tell you who they are. And y'all might have met some of them earlier. Mike Lammers, Rick Henfling, Vincent LaCourte, Chloe Mehring, Ed Van Cise, Anthony Vareja. Those are our flight directors. These are the sharpest people on the planet. And they run the mission control teams. We don't do anything other than safety of flight that they don't get buy-in on. We interact with them all the time, constantly, and we're not going to do anything unless it's in our flight plan, and if it deviates from our flight plan, they're going to be the ones that tell us to do it, except for those things that are safety of flight, right? Because that's our responsibility. And I'm grateful for those individuals I just mentioned and others and their teams, because those are the ones that know everything and allow the performance of the team to go off as well as it does. If you remember, OFT initially didn't go well. It was those teams led by Richard Jones and others that got that spacecraft home. And it was a wonderful thing, a great thing to be a part of. And the confidence we have in them and their capabilities helps us, because we cannot know everything and perform it well, but they can. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take another question from here in the room. Go ahead.
Hi, Stephen Clark, Ars Technica. Again, thanks for taking another question from me. You guys are going to be the first people to fly on the Atlas V, Starliner. I know you're going to be briefing the later crews about what the sensations are like, but do you have any information from sensors, microphones, accelerometers that have been on the orbital flight tests about what kind of vibrations you might be expecting at certain phases, how many Gs you'll be experiencing uphill and downhill, things like that?
Vibrations, no idea. Looking forward to it, whatever it is. Good question. 3.5 Gs is the limit. It's got actually the engine, the RD-180 will throttle to not exceed 3.5 Gs on launch. But you're right, it'll be different sensations. The shuttle flight that I flew compared to the Soyuz flight were completely different as far as the sensations. And we've talked about it before. We're looking forward to finding out what those sensations are, those physical sensations. They will be different, and describing those to those that come behind us. But like I said, what a great heritage, the Atlas. And goodness, we're the first individuals since Gemini to launch on an ELV, an early expendable launch vehicle that has now been human rated, if you will, with some capabilities for abort and other things is basically what it's been added to. And it's a great opportunity there as well, because you've got to go, like I said, all the way back to Gemini since someone that's launched on an ELV like we're going to have the opportunity to do.
During OFT, they had recordings, of course, that, like I mentioned, the Mustang system, so we do know some of what it could sound like, and we have some great engineers who have input that into our simulator, and we have a volume knob. Sometimes we have it up a little too loud, and we're like, whoa, hopefully it's not that loud when the jets are firing. We just turn it down. But we will come back and adjust that volume knob appropriately for future crews as we actually really hear what it's going to be like. But it sounds pretty, if you've heard valves in space, they sound pretty mechanical and chunky, but that's how jets operate in space. And so we're looking forward to hearing the whole combined system working together. We've been forewarned about a couple different things on the launch pad as valves are moving. We might hear, a little boom here and there when we're priming valves and stuff like that. So we'll be ready, as much as we can be. I'm sure we're going to ask the question if something sounds a little bit weird, like what was that? And
we will. And
somebody will answer, or we will we'll take note of it and bring that back home. So we're looking forward to it.
On entry on the shuttle mission, the STS-129, it was a perfect mission. We didn't have any problems with the orbiter. It was fantastic. But coming back, as we're in the G, coming back and entering the atmosphere, all of a sudden, boom! It was a huge sound, and that was my first flight. So I looked over at Commander Charlie Hobon. I'm like,
is that right?
Is that right? He goes, that ain't right. Well, we didn't know what it was. Well, turns out someone, I'll take I'll take responsibility, had not strapped down the fire extinguishers that was down on the middeck, and it came loose as the G came in and it slammed to the floor. We don't expect to hear anything like that, but if we do, we'll log it and we'll figure out what it is.
Okay, we still have a little bit of time left, so if there are any questions here in the room, please be sure to raise your hand and we will get the mic over to you. In the meantime, we'll head back to social media. David on X would like to ask Suni, how does it feel to be the first woman to fly in the first operational test of a spacecraft?
Oh gosh, I'm just here doing a job, right? So that's how we, look at each other. I don't really think of it as being, a girl or a boy or whatever that situation is. It's sort of been my life as, somebody going to the Naval Academy, going to test pilot school, going through flight school. It is what it is. You do your job, as Bill Belichick would say. You just do your job, and then there are opportunities that will come up if you just do your job. So I'm just here trying to do my job, happy to be part of this first crew. I think that is pretty awesome that we are getting to do that. I think on a daily basis, I don't think about it at all. I have to sort of pinch myself when I stop and go like, oh wow, this is the first time people are doing it. It's Butch and me, so that's pretty cool. So I don't know. I don't think about it in that regard. I think about the future crews and just hoping that we're going to make this spacecraft safe and ready for them with the questions that we've asked in the past and the answers that we've got implemented into the spacecraft.
Okay, well, that's all the questions we have for today. Thank you, everyone who joined through on our various platforms, and thank you to our crew for joining us today. So we will see all of you next time. Thanks.